Okay, this is Real Housewives of Potomac, Season 6, Episode 10. And it's a continuation of Robin's birthday luncheon. All the girls are invited except for Wendy and Karen. Giselle did not invite them because she is angry with both of those ladies. It starts off with a continuation of the fight from last episode where Candiace seems to be very jealous of Ashley, and she's talking about her forehead and her face, and of course there's nothing wrong with her face or forehead or anything. Her body is looking very good. She just had a baby, and she is carrying that postpartum weight, which will go down over time, but it's clear that Candiace is jealous and has some problems in her own marriage, and she's carrying that out on Ashley. Now, it's also interesting that these are the two people who have gotten into a marriage which involves black wives and white husbands, and that may also be something that Candiace is also having some problems with in dealing with somebody who has a marriage similar to hers, interracial, and may see some deficiencies on her own marriage that make her angry. So the ladies feel uncomfortable as Candiace is attacking Ashley, and finally they say, okay, let's end this, and finish their meal. These ladies are eating a variety of food, from fried chicken to various alcoholic drinks, and I doubt Ashley has an alcoholic drink because she is breastfeeding, and also seafood, clams, and so forth. Who knows what else? But it's just a wide variety of foods, and this is how they try to get some interest in the show, because there are no real storylines, and so they keep sending these ladies out for different lunches and so forth so that they can generate something interesting to do, other than just sit around and argue about people's bone structures and so forth. At this luncheon, Mia says she is having her own party, and she is going to have it so that all the ladies are going to attend, including Wendy and Karen, and she suggests to Giselle that Giselle take this opportunity to make up to Karen and to apologize, because Karen's upset because of Giselle having said something about Ray's death, and instead of coming out with a nice personality, Giselle just says she will not apologize, and both Karen and her husband will be dead before she apologizes. So she just doubles down on the whole problem and says she is not going to make up or make nice with Karen for this next function. The function that Mia is planning is called a goddess lunch, and it's going to be a picnic in a park, and everyone is going to be there. Next, we go to see Karen, who is doing some video shooting for Surrey County, for which she has been named an ambassador of goodwill and a travel ambassador. So her job includes her going out and trying to drum up business for Surrey County. However, she is doing the video shoots in Potomac, which is not in Surrey County, but she says this is just a trial. And so she goes to some different places in Potomac and shoots and tries to stimulate interest for Surrey County. There don't seem to be many things in Surrey County, and Karen says you can come to Surrey County for ham, and you can come for peanuts, and she says most people don't know that peanuts come with a shell, and she mentions a couple of other things that are in Surrey County which aren't too heavily identified with Surrey County. So I think that this particular video shoot is not going to really help Surrey County, but it is a good thing for Karen because she gets to pose and picture herself in different scenes on the video shoots. The next scene that we see is Giselle in her home with her 3 daughters. She has an older daughter and twins that are a little bit younger. Beautiful girls, very nicely mannered, and Giselle is talking about their future, and she talks about what kind of person she wants them to marry. You know, I think that Giselle has no storyline. I think it's really bad to put Giselle's children on this show because they talk so poorly about the parent, both Giselle and the dad of these kids. And, you know, in the Bible, they say honor your father and your mother. And I think this show just drags both the father and mother down. And it's very bad to be in a show with these kids where you're just basically talking about how mean the mother is and how petty she is. And the father's running around with all these women having babies. And the mother even says she's willing to put up with a man running around on her, but this just got to be too much and so forth. It's just ridiculous. I think Giselle either has to find a different storyline. Maybe she could go out and find a job, you know, kind of like Lucille Ball used to do. To keep her storyline going, she used to get these crazy jobs, and then we would follow her as she tried to fulfill the requirements of the job. Just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you can't work, and Giselle could do that for a storyline, but I think her kids definitely have to come off the show. They're not part of the Real Housewives of the Potomac, and because they're being presented in such a bad way on this TV show, it is not good for them in their future to continue on this show in this manner. If you don't want to talk about people's kids, don't put the kids on the show, especially in such a major way. These kids have too much of a role on this show, which is very petty and shows the worst of women and so-called fake friends. I would rather have seen Giselle take this opportunity to explain to her girls why they needed to protect themselves from sexually transmitted diseases, and also explain to them about pedophiles and people who give date rape drugs to children. Giselle herself has teamed up with Charlemagne, who has admitted on his show that he was a pedophile and gave date rape drugs to females and then took advantage of them. And some of his relatives were also included in these crimes. So that would have been a really great message to get across to her girls, because every girl going to college is going to encounter situations where people will try to get them to unknowingly take drugs that will make them more susceptible to being raped and violated by strangers. So there are some good things that can come out of these discussions, but this was a missed opportunity. Then after Giselle, we are in a scene with Candiace as she comes to her home where her husband is in the kitchen milling around, and she's upset because she has some work that's coming up with her song, and she's upset that her husband has other things to do in his area of work and that he won't be able to be with her as she carries out her recording for her song. He complains that she shows no respect for him and his location, and she's just basically moping around the table. It is of note that she has a hat on which says DOPE, D-O-P-E, which I think kind of fits her and her attitude and the way she treats her husband and acts in his family. So that was kind of funny. Otherwise, not much going on here. He insists that he needs respect and that she doesn't need him to be at everything she does. There are other people who can help her through, who are more trained in that field, and that kind of ends it for that. There's not much more going on in that scene. Well, there is one more thing that happened in that scene, in that when she comes in, after a minute or two, she says, "Are you drinking?" in a kind of scolding manner to her husband, and he says he is. And I thought that was pretty ironic for her to say that, because she's been out with the girls drinking and acting a fool, and yet she doesn't want him to drink. Very hypocritical, and again, she wants to keep her thumb on this man, and she wants to control his every move. I don't know if he's a heavy drinker. We haven't really seen that in this show, but we do know that Candiace was out drinking with the girls, and we didn't count how many drinks she had while she was out. So otherwise, that was the end of that scene. In the next scene, we see Wendy and her husband, and they are outside playing a light game of catch with a football with her two sons and daughter. They're having a great time, and she, on her job, is working with the Derek Chauvin trial, and he was found guilty of excessive force and murder of George Floyd. So her son asks, will the police consider him dangerous and try to kill him in the future? And the dad says, well, you know, sometimes bad people grow up and they decide they want to become policemen, and they do become policemen, and they might not have the right mindset to be a policeman, and they may intentionally hurt you, so you do have to be careful. And they hug it out. And this would have been a good time for not only talking about American policemen, but also policemen in various countries, because we know that in a lot of the African countries, they have a lot of people who are authority figures who sometimes turn on the population and kill and murder regular citizens. So it's not just an American problem, although Americans do see it as just that. But I think when you're an international person, that it would be good to bring out the differences that exist across racial lines, and that the same things happen in Africa, and no matter where you are, you have to be very careful of authority figures where they overextend their authority and may try to do harm to you. But she can do that in the future, and it was nice to see her discussing the need for them to be cautious in the future when they handle their affairs with the police. In fact, if you look at one of my past videos, I did a video on what people, especially minorities, should do if they are stopped by the police. And it is an effort to try to stop people from doing activities which might cause the police to become hyper cautious and possibly pull out a gun. In the next scene, we see Ashley coming to a luncheon with Karen. Ashley brings little Dylan, and he is adorable. And they sit down, and Ashley says, you know, it's time for Karen and Giselle to bury the hatchet, forgive each other. Giselle's been going through a lot because of her breakup with Jamal, her ex-husband, and Karen says she has already apologized. She's not going to do any more apologizing. It's time for Giselle to apologize, and so they remain in a stalemate. Ashley says she'd be happy to be the middle part of a Venn diagram where she'll connect the two. And then they show a Venn diagram on the screen, and it doesn't make much sense. I mean, she basically wants to be a mediator between the two and help bring them together. So that's pretty much the end of that luncheon. Not much more happens there. In the next scene, we remember Robin had been asking to have coaching done, so she meets with her marriage and family therapist, and the therapist asks what's been going on with her. And Robin says, well, she has been feeling overwhelmed. She started a business, and it just took off, and she's had so many orders. Unfortunately, Robin is not truly honest with the therapist, and she does not really reveal her problems. She talks about the number of hats she has to get out. She says she needs a larger space. She says she needs more support from her fiance to help keep her business moving forward. But she doesn't really discuss the problems that she's having with Juan. She doesn't discuss that she was the person who first left the marriage to have an affair, and she does not discuss Juan's current situation in that he has at least one and maybe more significant others outside of the marriage that she hasn't even dealt with, and Juan seems to be involved with these activities still. So the family therapist looks a little skeptical, but she follows what Robin has told her, and she says, we will follow up on your goals to improve your life and move you forward at the next meeting. And Robin says, okay, they will do that, and that's pretty much the end of that scene. The next scene is Mia's goddess picnic, and it's in a gazebo, a very large gazebo, in a park, and it looks very nice. Mia is dressed very nice. She looks beautiful, and she puts on a head wreath of flowers, and then the other girls come, and looks like they're going to have a good time. Everyone looks very nice. They are dressed in white. Ascala comes, and she is a little bit more in Ethiopian costume, but looks beautiful, and I, of course, call her the Queen of Sheba. When Ashley comes, she brings Dylan, and Ascala volunteers to help Ashley get the baby carriage up the slate steps that lead up to the gazebo. Well, Wendy noticed that there was going to be a problem, but didn't at all offer to help Ashley. Wendy seems to have a sour face during the arrival of the ladies to the event, and I think she is going to put a damper on all of the activities by the way she's looking. Candiace arrives looking unrecognizable in a short wig, and Robin arrives in a beautiful blue summer dress. Candiace, of course, starts talking about her video and has to explain her video schedule, and then she tells the girls that they are invited to the last 2 days of the video shooting because they're going to be in the video, and it's asked, is Ashley invited? And Candiace says, no, Ashley is not invited to be in the video. And Ashley says, we respect each other's space, which was so nice of Ashley to say that, because I think that's true. I think, sometimes you aren't going to fit into everything that somebody else is having, and so I thought that was a nice way for Ashley to look at it. And plus, she is still breastfeeding, and I don't think she would want to leave Dylan in order to go to the video shoot. The other girls seem excited, as does Wendy. She seems very excited to be in the video, and I'm sure she will be showing off her new attributes. Of course, Candiace is going to be agitated and negatively reacting to the fact that Ashley has a baby and brought the baby to this goddess luncheon. So Mia says the first activity is everyone's going to go around the table and say a nice thing about each person at the table. Everybody moans because this is a difficult group and there are a lot of problems among the individuals. Ashley starts and she says she likes the fact that Candiace is committed to her career, and Candiace responds that she likes the fact that Ashley is committed to her motherhood journey. Even with that, Candiace says she had to reach hard to compliment Ashley. But I think that was a really true statement in that Ashley is committed to taking care of her children, and so it wasn't a reach, but Candiace really holds a lot of grudges and really has a lot of deep negative feelings against Ashley. So the women are going around the table trying to think of nice things to say to each other. It's going fairly smoothly, and then it gets to Giselle, and Mia says, Giselle, can you say something nice about Karen? And Giselle says, well, everyone knows that Karen and I are not in a good situation right now, so I don't have anything nice to say. And then she goes on to Wendy and says, the question I had about you and your husband, possibly your husband having a girlfriend or a baby out of wedlock with somebody, which was in the gossip columns. She says that that was not done maliciously, but it was done just to ask if everything was okay. Wendy is having none of it. She says that that was not right. She's protecting her family, and she says that she will smooth things over with Giselle, but in her private talk, she says that things are not going well with Giselle and that she will be a fake friend, but everything that she sees with Giselle right now is just temporary. Then, of course, Candiace pops in her 2 cents and asks whether or not the information that Wendy said about Jamal having a girlfriend, was that the reason that you guys divorced? Giselle says no, that was not. That information was known to her before, and that had nothing to do with her divorce. And then Candiace said something else about the divorce, which was none of her business and certainly shouldn't be brought up at this time. So tensions are high. And that's pretty much the end of this episode.